Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome me back. Welcome me back to another exciting IncrediChat. It's been a few weeks. It's been a few weeks. Life is busy, you know. Hey, we got a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we're coming to you live tonight, both over on Instagram and on Facebook and YouTube and all of our great channels tonight. We got a fun show tonight. We're going to talk Comic Cons, comic books, all kinds of fandom, fun stuff with a good buddy, Joe Ryan. Hello, welcome. Thank you for welcoming back, Joe. We got to talk. But yeah, so tonight, our guest, GMX cosplay, Anthony. You're gonna like tonight's guest. Let me bring him on, and we're gonna bring him over here onto the Instagram and onto the Facebook. Welcome tonight's guest, our buddy Johnny C. All right, so Johnny C is gonna be popping in on them both, and here we are on the YouTube and the Facebook and you should be there. There we are live over there on Instagram. How's the feedback on your end?
Good. I just had to turn down the volume on the phone, but everything's a-okay on my side. How about you?
Sounds good here too. Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you for having me tonight. So fun to hang out. Appreciate it.
No, this is great because you are a presence, and I got to know you going up to Massachusetts to our buddy Gary Somers Comic Con, the Northeast Comic Con. But you are like a presence here in the Northeast. I mean, you're at all the cons. We were talking earlier about Boston. We were talking about Rhode Island. I know you're at Terrificon. You hit all this stuff. So I mean, anybody who does cons, New York and up, they're bound to run into you somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I try to kind of be a little bit of everywhere, just so that people kind of remember you, leave a good presence in your wake, and that reverberates back, and people remember, and they have good experiences with you, and that sticks with them. So the next time they remember you, they go, oh, I love that guy. You know what I mean? You just kind of just leave a good taste in people's mouths, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so one of my mantras too, being a creative spirit and doing creative things, is just it's quality, consistency, and travel. So if you do quality work, you do it consistently, and then you just travel around and show people that there's something to be said about that. And that's kind of what I do to kind of like help make it, so to speak.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess let's talk a little bit about you. Like I said, you're from Massachusetts, I believe, right? I see you around. I don't even know where you live. You live in New England somewhere, Massachusetts area, right?
Yeah,
Boston.
it's funny. Like, so even like I go to San Diego every year for SDCC, and people are like, oh, I thought you were West Coast, because they see me out there all the time, And I'm like, no, I'm from Boston. I get I get everywhere. But I'm from Massachusetts, more specifically Sudbury, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Our zip code is 1776, so it's quite revolutionary.
That's fun.
Yep. Another fun fact: it's the hometown of Captain America.
Oh. Well, we could talk about that later on, because that's a fun story, right?
Yeah, it's a fun one. We can talk about that one later on too.
But how did you get involved in this whole world of Comic Cons and creating and content and all that stuff?
Sure. So, really, it started with again, I mentioned my creative spirit. I've always had a sense to want to create, and usually when I find myself that I've got a lot of ideas or things I'd like to express, and I don't have a method to do so, it kind of like comes out in different ways. Sometimes it's not so healthy or good or whatever the case may be. So, idle hands, devil's plaything, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I really just wanted to focus a lot of my creative energy on something where I can make something and people can enjoy it. And originally, a lot of that started with film. So I would do web series, short films, music videos, things of that nature, and that was fun. It was gratifying. It helped me learn how to write and how to produce and how to kind of be a leader to bring people together, creative people together to do something. It's I don't know if you've ever worked in film or anything like that before, but to bring so many people together on a team to film something on like a single day or a scheduled set of several days and for very little money is very hard to do.
Yeah.
It progressively got harder and harder. But I always had a love for comics. and I discovered that, well, I can kind of just redirect this into creating comics. And so I kind of took a stab at that. I started going to the educational panels at
Gotcha.
conventions, how to write comics, how to break into the industry. And I didn't really want to follow that to a T, but I also wanted to kind of use it as a guideline to make it my own and to play in that sandbox.
Yeah. Let me ask you. So comic books. What was your starter drug, your entry level drug into the world of comic books, right?
So I was very lucky. A cousin of mine, my second cousin actually, he opened up a comic book store when I was in that perfect early teenage to get into comics. So I was at the very cusp of the Image boom.
Gotcha.
So a lot of those early Image books were kind of what I was eating up voraciously at the time. But also X-Men. X-Men was my number one introductory point. Claremont's X-Men got me interested in the comics, and especially so when they were given to me. My cousin would bring me books, and he would bring me Wolverine and Punisher, and I ate all of that stuff up. Punisher's my favorite comic character and comic now in retrospect, but I just ate up all of that.
Gotcha. And it's funny, like you mentioned Image, you mentioned X-Men, Punisher. I think a lot of people around our age, that was really that gateway drug into the realm, especially like in the early to mid 90s, right? Everybody was doing X-Men, and everybody was doing Todd McFarlane, all that. Those were the go-to. Spawn, yep.
Yeah. Image was also doing some pretty cool stuff back then. I mean, Sam Keith's The Max. The artwork was wild and unlike any other comic you'd see out there. So, we were getting these very wild, different types of comics that weren't the traditional mainstream norm. And it was pretty cool. And it was cool enough that mainstream was noticing it. MTV made a Max cartoon and it blew it wide open, It was just cool to see that that part of our culture, our comic culture, break out and expand, especially in an era where we were very few and far between when it came to comic book adaptations. It was a big deal that Spider-Man was being made into a movie like in the early 2000s, or Batman in '88. Like that was a big deal, Superman in the '70s.
Well, I mean, like even think about, obviously when we were very young kids, we had the Lou Ferrigno series, but I remember when I was in high school, then they did the TV movies, with Thor and Daredevil, the Death of the Incredible Hulk. I mean, like, you look at. I mean, I guess they're kind of cheesy and fun comic book movies, but like to comic fans like us, oh my God, this was like the best thing in the world, like this cheesy Thor.
So that's the other thing too, is I feel like, and I might be off base here, or maybe I'm onto something, but you also have to look at that era specifically of when that came out of the '80s.
Yeah,
and you also have to look at pro wrestling during that era. Right? Like that was something where like people would dress up in wild costumes and they would wrestle, and they were larger than life comic book characters come to life.
Yeah.
That were competing in a ring, weekly, whatever. Right. So it almost translated where, well, we can take the same aesthetic and give it to Marvel characters and make a TV show out of it. And I think that's part of what elevated that Hulk series, is that you could have a green guy with ripped clothes and a powdered wig and green makeup and get away with it because pro wrestling was doing something adjacent and people were eating that up, right?
Yeah. And again, and then you're talking about that stuff too. Even let's talk the animation that was coming out at that time: Batman the animated series, X-Men. And I think it's on Disney Plus now, but I think and people have always been a big fan of it. But like that X-Men series, unless you're a diehard fan again and grew up in that time period, that's like a forgotten series. But my God, that was a pretty strong series too.
Oh, so that X-Men series, I mean, that was also one of the driving factors to help kind of push me towards comics and loving it so much. Not only because I was seeing some of the storylines I was reading adapted into like a motion format, but the love and the thought and the care that was put into that series was wonderful. And beyond that, being a kids show or a kids cartoon, it took it very seriously. It didn't address the viewer as like, you are a child and I'm speaking down on you. Like, not to downplay G.I. Joe or Transformers, but
Well,
all those were always
what about like
kinda
the Super Friends, right? Look at that.
Super Friends. They were always aimed at like you're a child watching us superheroes, whereas X-Men was like, this is like you're a part of this story. You're viewing the soap opera, so to speak. It was very dramatic. Where else in a cartoon would you have a character gut punch another character for getting one of their members killed?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was very like hard business.
And the love triangle with what you call Wolverine and Jean Grey and Cyclops, like
kids cartoon, like that's wild, you know?
Why were they doing that, right?
Right.
But I mean, again, it was definitely a revolution. I guess a revolutionary time for animation and us comic book fans. And you know, like you mentioned it too. Like I don't even want to say we were few and far between, but like we were like a hidden thing. I had this conversation years ago with somebody who was not a comic book fan, you know, and it was New York Comic Con time, and I think, you know, like one of the late night shows or whatever, they were goofing, like they had in the news, they were showing the people in New York City, and I mean, certainly you've been down to New York Comic Con. Anybody who's down in the New York area, you know, you're down there in that even near vicinity, like the 20 block radius of it, right? And you're seeing people. What is this? You see people come and with all these costumes and craziness on there, you know.
So I was just gonna say, one of the things about New York Comic Con, whenever somebody says, "Hey, like, what do you think of New York Comic Con?" or if you were to compare it to San Diego, you know, the shows themselves, the content, I'd say are on par. Both are bringing the biggest of the biggest names in comics and movies and TV to the fans directly in these several day events. But the difference itself is genuinely the city. So, you know, you exit San Diego Comic Con, you're in the downtown San Diego. The weather is beautiful. There's palm trees. There's a wonderful nightlife right across the way over at Fifth Avenue in the Gaslamp Quarter. And it's just kind of like a real great environment, very lax. You exit New York Comic Con and it's like the city smells like trash because there's heaps on the sidewalk. There's like a cab driver fighting with a Deadpool over like walking in the street. You know what I mean? It's like it's the cities itself that kind of define the overall. And it's kind of like that's my experience with the two. Not to knock New York. I love that show. I think it's amazing, but it's like New York's New York. It's not the laid back place that San Diego is, you know?
It's not. But again, it's just crazy to see that. And like I said, going back to this conversation, you know, whether it be San Diego, whether it be New York, you know, like you're realizing that this is like the hidden people are fans. This is the hidden side. Like, you know, before we were growing up, it's like, don't tell anybody we like comic books. Haha, you're going to get beat up because you like comic books. And all of a sudden now, like you're cool if you like comic books.
You can kind of see the needle move a little bit, right? In that regard. So, and I noticed it a little bit actually, even after I graduated, I noticed some of so that was the funny thing. In high school, like I kind of ran in several groups. I like hung out with the misfit kids that were considered the trench coat mafias. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The heavy metal kids. I hung out with the shop kids. I hung out with the football guys because I was on the football team. I hung out with the stoners. So like I kind of had that like little mix of everybody. But it was funny because I'd find myself at times at parties, even after I graduated, I'd go back and some of the jocks were like, "Yo, tell us about X-Men. Like, what's Magneto's deal? Like, could he really tilt the Earth off of its polar axis?" And they'd be drinking at parties and like just pontificate, doing the stuff that we do casually as nerds. Like, you know, could Magneto really pull the adamantium out of Wolverine? How would that physically work, you know? And it was just, you notice there was a crossover in that audience a little bit because I think the things about comics and pop culture, they get down to the core of the individual. No matter where you're affiliated, that speaks to you as a person. And, you know, there's nothing else in the world that could probably inflict upon that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, and now you know, comics and the pop culture, it's such an accepting community. It was funny. Like I had our friend Anthony on GMX Cosplay who's watching us. And then,
oh, hey, man.
And Chelsea was on a couple of weeks ago.
Chelsea's wonderful. I love her.
And we were talking about, you know, the fandom and the acceptance that is in it, you know, and in that point we were talking about cosplay, you know.
Yep.
But just overall, you know, there's really, for the most part, something in it for everybody. You know, it's all inclusive.
So, and I think that's part of, I think, what helps make Comic-Con and the, you know, kind of pop culture environment attractive to people is that it's very accepting. You could be very different and you can go there and nobody would really judge you. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And that's it's like a community into itself. When you go to a Comic-Con, you feel like you're around your people, and a lot of that's kind of like an accepting experience. You know, having grown up very religious, I honestly can akin the feeling of going to a Comic-Con the same feeling as going to a church.
Gotcha.
Not that I pray at a Comic-Con, but the feeling of like community and joy that one would feel going to church regularly, you can feel that from going to a Comic-Con. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, and I you know, it's funny, like, you know, I guess to some people there's a church that they pray to at these Comic-Cons, right. Whoever the artist or the celebrity is that they want to see, right?
Right. It's just fandom, right?
It's fun. But yeah, no, it's just a part of our I guess Americana now. You know, like really, I mean, like there was always Superman and Batman and Captain America and Spider-Man, like these symbols. But like, I mean, everything is comic books and pop culture now, regardless. Like,
so, you know, it's funny that you say that actually, because even for a short window there, I considered purchasing a Comic-Con and trying to be a convention promoter. And I was kind of really thinking about conventions overall as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think back to like events where like the circus would come to town, or there'd be a fair or a carnival, and you'd see like communities going out for that. And I noticed over time there was less of that and more Comic-Cons. And the same type of effect of people that would go to a state fair or a Ren fair, or whatever, they would be going to Comic-Cons now. And I feel like that kind of filled in the gap where those carnivals and, you know, traveling circuses were, you know, kind of missing essentially.
Yeah. And you know, and again, growing up in the time period that we grew up in, I mean, like what a cool experience it is now too. Like you said, like they go city to city, or every weekend there's a Comic-Con somewhere, you know. And you know, like when I was in high school, like, you know, and again, like I've been fortunate, and obviously you have too, you know, to meet so many of our, like, you know, childhood icons, right? And even people that we now watch in things or read their works and whatnot. But I mean, like what an amazing thing is like, you know, this weekend I can go see Captain Kirk. You know, like I love Star Trek. I can go meet him now. You know, he's accessible.
Yeah, that's wonderful too. Is that you can actually connect, you know, in a very one-on-one kind of way. You have opportunities to express feelings. Speaking of Captain Kirk, actually, so. I met him at New York Comic Con one time, and I walked up to him. He actually had nobody at his line, so I just happened to catch him at the right time, and I was like shocked because I was like, "This is my captain, you know, this is Captain frickin' Kirk here, you know." So I walk up to William, you know, Mr. Shatner there, and I let him know. I go, you know, it's an honor to meet you. I just wanted to extend something to you. I just want to say that, you know, my dad, him and I, we never saw eye to eye on some things. Not that he was terrible or anything, but we just wouldn't agree on things. But there's one thing we would agree on, is that you're our captain. You know, of all the captains, you know, Captain Kirk is our captain. He was really like kind of, I could tell he was a little touched by that. He goes, well, the next time you come see me, make sure you bring your dad. Yeah. And then sure enough, he came to Rhode Island. I think it was that following show or the following season. And I was lucky enough to bring, you know, actually it was my birthday. It was November 1st. And my dad goes, you know, what can I do for your birthday? And I go, well, you know what? Actually, I want to bring you to meet Captain Kirk. And we ended up going to Rhode Island, and I fulfilled that request of William Shatner to bring my dad along, and it was great just to give him the opportunity to meet one of his icons as well, growing up in the 60s where, there weren't many conventions or appearances where you could actually meet William Shatner, TJ Hooker, Captain Kirk himself,
Yeah, whatever it is, you get to meet these people. And again, you just mentioned it. Happy belated birthday. I know all your fans on everything wish you happy birthday. I did too, but happy birthday.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries. I'm still getting, things on my wall, happy birthday, happy belated. And all it really does is remind me how many wonderful people I'm actually connected to.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the byproduct of just getting around and traveling and just meeting so many great people.
Yeah. I just want to put up what Joe Ryan said. And Joe Ryan's a buddy of ours down here. Okay. He was actually with us over at Mid-Hudson Comic Con when they were down here in Poughkeepsie. Joe Ryan says, honestly, it's so true. Back when I was a kid, I was the weird kid who drew in the corner and didn't fit in because people bullied me because I like animation and comics. Now if I had been a kid, I'd be more accepted. Listen, absolutely, Joe. I work in a school, and I can't tell you in the and I go find these kids anyways with my role at a school. All the amazing artwork that I see, like during the study hall and the lunch periods, like when I was in school, and Johnny, you the same thing too. I'm sure the teachers like, put that away. That's not school related, But now we encourage that. I mean, absolutely, so true.
So yeah, I mean, it's tough back in the day, and things were a lot different when I was growing up. Like we'd get picked on, we'd like fight each other. You know what I mean? And like you're forced into that a little bit. And now I look back and regretfully look back in all those choices I made in the past. And then I almost feel like that helped shape me to be a better person now. You know what I mean? And kind of give back a little bit in the way at conventions and things like that, and try to help just spread a little bit more generosity and kindness to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say we got a bunch of people watching there on Instagram. We got some people watching on Facebook. Guys, if you have any questions, you want to throw any comments, please do that. Make ssure you go and follow Johnny C on Twitter and Instagram at Johnny C. Yeah. I keep saying when I read John NYC, but Johnny C 138 on Twitter and Instagram. So follow him there. And Johnny, you mentioned before about like how you go to the cons and everybody gets a taste. So I mean, we want to talk about two things. First of all, the taste for, and you hawk coffee at the convention.
Yes.
Well, they do get a taste of Johnny C because you're doling out the coffee. But then you also have behind you your the book that you have. So tell us a little bit about the coffee. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So the coffee actually comes from the book Surrounded by Death.
Yeah.
So to give you a little background, I've worked many different jobs over the years: windshield replacement, fraud prevention. I currently work as a GPS technician for a company. But one of the things, I spent 8 years of my life working in coffee shops. So I always had a love for coffee. I learned a little bit about it. I learned about the process and some of the intricacies. And I've always loved coffee. Even from a young age, I drank coffee. So when it came time to start making comic books and I was getting creative, and Surrounded by Death was actually the second book I've made after Sartana, a spaghetti Western comic of mine. And one of the story arcs in Surrounded by Death involves these survivors living out the zombie apocalypse in this kind of old rundown mall. And one of the things that kind of keeps this community together is things that they appreciate amongst their resources, in particular, a very specific blend of coffee. Okay. And that's all baked into the first 2 issues of the book. So when I came on to produce that book, I was like, well, we can actually make that coffee blend and bring a little bit of the comic book to the audiences and kind of I love when people do that, when you can expand the story, or like Galaxy's Edge, when you can step into a cantina, you know what I mean?
Get the blue milk. I had it.
I haven't had the blue milk yet. I'm looking forward to when I finally can.
And you can get it with alcohol too, just so you know.
Oh, spiked. I like that.
There you go. Anyways,
so that's really what my intention was with the coffee, is to bring a little piece of Surrounded by Death to audiences. And the coffee almost took on a little bit of a life of its own, but it really is, I try to keep it closely tied to the comic. So you may see me at conventions with a green apron looking like a barista that says espresso presto. That's
Yes.
just the fake cafe from the comic.
But I mean, certainly, and again, the times I've seen you at the conventions with the coffee, I mean, what a hit. People are coming up there and getting that coffee.
So that's the one thing too, and you know, when I did the campaign for Surrounded by Death, a lot of the perks and things I included in the campaign were practical items I knew I wanted people would use in everyday life: coffee mugs, aprons, things of that nature. And coffee is something that everybody consumes.
Absolutely.
I go to Dunkin' Donuts every single day. So why would you not want to have coffee on site on a convention floor where you can grab a cup, grab some indie comics, check things out, and then, hang out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the comic now too. I mean, so what was the inspiration behind that? How did you get to create this?
So Surrounded by Death was originally a comic that was pitched by a friend of mine, Mark Elliott, out of San Diego. In San Diego, there are Creator Connection panels where it's a little bit like speed dating. They take a writer and they pitch you against an artist. You got 5 minutes to chit chat back and forth to see if you can come up with a collab, and then you rotate, you move over one. Well, one particular year at one of these Creator Connections, there was like 23 writers and one poor girl who was the artist. And mathematically, in a speed dating environment, it just didn't work out that well. So they, sent half the people away. And then I turn around and go, you know what? Let me just sit as like a producer. And I can just talk to people, let them pitch their stuff to me, sharpen their pitches. And, you never know, if I might like an idea, maybe I'll run with it. And sure enough, somebody pitched Surrounded by Death as a novel to me. And as I'm reading the manuscript, I'm going, this would be a great comic book. It was just so visual, and it had so many like really great gags that, just the added visual aspect would have enhanced it even more. And I said, this has got to be a comic book. So I took it upon myself to produce the book, kind of help Mark Elliott develop it. And then, ever since then, we've been, going strong. We're actually on our second issue. It's taken a little bit to get us out. But we just had a successful campaign, funded in 27 hours. We almost doubled our goal, and we got issues 3 and 4 right around the corner.
Nice.
And,
so
the story itself is ideally about Matt and Pete, these two main characters here. Matt's the de facto leader in the mall. Think of him like the Rick Grimes character from Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And Pete is his buddy, who was the maintenance manager or the security manager at the mall, who's like mildly on the spectrum, gun-toting alcoholic. And in the zombie apocalypse, that's somebody you probably want to have on your side, somebody who's got an attention to detail with a lot of weaponry, right?
There you go. That's the way to survive.
The story's kind of about their friendship, surviving the zombie apocalypse, trying to get coffee, trying to Matt's also like kind of a little bit of a lovelorn, so he's trying to hook up with his love interest. So there's like a little bit of like a Hitch vibe there, where he's like the cool guy, like the Ryan Reynolds, but he also can't get the girl he wants,
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that subplot going on there. But it's been a fun story to write. Mark Elliott's a co-creator. I'm a producer. Joe Martinez out of New York is the illustrator. Eugene Betavu out of Moldova is the colorist.
And what I like hearing about that and talking to creators like you, how it really is like a team effort. You got a great team working on this, and a lot of people ask, and going back to what you said, going to these panels at the Comic Cons, and then certainly you and I have been at like more Comic Cons than we can probably count, right?
Of course.
But that's the thing, is like, and again, growing up when we did, it's like, ooh, I want to work for Marvel. Ooh, I want to work for DC. That was the thing. I'm gonna write a Spider-Man story. I'm gonna write whatever. The joy of going to these Comic Cons and just that world is, all the creator made content that's out there.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. It's funny that you say about working for Marvel. It's like, I think initially that's kind of the dream. Like, I want to get in there and I want to work for Marvel. I want to work with all these toys. And then now as I become a creator and I kind of just see how like the sausage is made, so to speak, it's like I enjoy being a self-published creator so much because I'm like just kind of in control of my project and everything. Like if Marvel came knocking, I think I would only have like one, maybe two genuine stories to tell. Where I'd want, and you know what I mean? And it's like that's just being realistic, like you know, taking the fantasy of I want to work for Marvel and just kind of like boiling it down to, well, if I was really gonna work there, what would I tell? What would I, you know what I mean? And I think, like I said, I really only have one or two stories in my pocket if they ever do come knocking one day.
Yeah, and you know, like again, those one or two stories, you know, because some like you know, if Marvel came and said, hey, you want to come and do something, and this works for any genre, whether it's a Star Wars thing or you know, like a Scooby Doo thing or Spider-Man, whatever it is, you know,
Right.
so many stories over the years have already been told. What is your contribution going to be to that world, right? And then, you know, when you have your own characters, your own content, you know, the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want. You know, Marvel hires you to write Spider-Man, or Disney says, come and do some Star Wars for us. You know, there are rules that you need to follow.
Right. You gotta play their way unless you're like, you know, really well sought after. You know what I mean? Even then, you probably couldn't just pitch whatever you want. Like, so that's the other thing too is the Marvel story I'd want to tell leans more towards the Marvel Knights, Marvel Max side of things. That they'd have to be completely cool with me, you know, messing up some characters in the process to tell the story. You know what I mean?
Because it'd be like, well, you know, you can't kill anybody that's important because we got this plan down the road for them, you know, and that's the thing. And I mean, and I guess in the world of comic books, and certainly back in the day, not so much now because they do well. I mean, even now, but you know that's how we got into this whole multiverse world that we're in now, anyways, because all these different creators, my table, all these different creators had all their different visions, and all these stories were told. And now it's like, well, how do we mesh all these things together? You know?
Yeah, right. It's I think in some ways it's just opportunities to make more money or expand a product, and in other ways it's like how do we genuinely tell a story that brings all these components together in a very meaningful and respectful way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, certainly working for the big guns, like there are the benefits of it, you know. And I mean, they do give a creative license. Like I'm just gonna pull this out. You know, I'm a toy guy, and I just picked this up. But I mean, like, geez, Lou. I mean, here's a character that we knew where her story went, you know, but people just couldn't get enough of her. I mean, who doesn't love some Captain Carter?
Oh, that was my favorite episode of What If too.
Everybody loves her, you know.
Oh, she was amazing.
People love Haley Atwell. People loved her as Agent Carter. So they're like, cha-ching, how can we cash in more? Oh, let's do Captain Carter, right?
Oh, yeah. You know, I can't move my laptop, but I'm live on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, I mean, you can just see like the toys I have everywhere.
Nice.
You know, like just I'm a big fan of stuff, and you know what I mean? Like,
got some Star Wars up there?
Got some Star Wars. I got Anakin and Obi-Wan. I got some Hot Toys up there. I got Snake Plissken. He's my dude. My bookshelf over there. I got my Avengers right over there on the wall. No, yeah, you know, I always believe you got to indulge in your fanboy still, even as a creator. Then you start, you know, because if you don't, you start to lose touch. And then, you know, I feel like you lose touch and the appreciation for it becomes too much work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you know, we talked about Captain Carter, you know, and I want to touch upon this, and you know this story, of course, because you lived this story, but you kind of went virtual a few years ago, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So I don't know if everybody watching this, but you made your, I think was like Good Morning America or whatever, picked up your high school reunion photos, because you alluded to it in the beginning of this.
Yes. So I went to high school with Chris Evans, Captain America himself. I always say that he got the job because of our zip code being 1776. So, but you know, I had seen Chris only once before since graduating, and that was in San Diego. He was doing an appearance at a screening of the first film and I kind of like a fanboy waited outside because I wanted to run into him. I actually brought my yearbook with me, just hoping I'd run into him and have him sign it. It'll be a funny gag. And because I just thought, I wouldn't even see him again after that because he's just so busy. And sure enough, he came to the 20th year reunion. And back in San Diego when we met, we took a photo. It came out blurry because my BlackBerry really sucked.
Yeah. So did he remember you when he came?
Oh,
when you were
of course.
In San Diego?
I look a lot alike. I mean, aside from the beard, and I'm like 3 sizes bigger, but I look just like I did then. So he recognized me right off the bat. And even at the reunion, I didn't want to bother him, so I was kind of doing my own thing and talking to other people. But it's almost like at every turn I ran into him. And when we went outside, he goes, "Hey, come on over. Let's get caught up." So we were chit-chatting, and I was, just praising all of his work. And I go, "Let's snap a photo." We snapped the photo. I posted it to my profile, not thinking it was public. And one of the caveats was like, don't send any, don't send any photos to the media or anything.
Yeah.
That I did not do, but I guess if your profile is public on Facebook, it's open to everybody, including the media. So they picked it up and ran with it, and I kind of felt like a jerk for doing that, but it was also like I was very grateful that he took the time to talk with me, and just he's very down to earth, wonderful guy. He does so much for kids, and just he's just a genuine individual, and I can't say enough kind things about the guy.
But I mean, honestly, and I mean, did he reach out after the video went, the picture in public?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Nope.
But I mean, there must have been something like for the union. Did you guys even know he was planning on coming, or it was just like he showed up?
Some people did, some people didn't. I didn't. I thought he was busy filming. At the time, I believe he was filming the show Defending Jacob, which is on Apple TV.
Yeah.
So I thought he was really busy with that, and he wouldn't make it. So I was like, I don't want people to get their hopes up. So I was like, don't expect him to come or anything, And sure enough, he showed up. It was real sweet appearance. He, signed, took photos with people, signed autographs for the staff at the restaurant we were at, and again, real nice guy. Can't say enough good stuff about him.
I mean, and I can only imagine, because I was thinking about that as we were getting ready to have this conversation too. I was like, I can only imagine people are probably like they're like, "Oh, can you talk to my kid quickly? Say hi to my kid," right?
yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of that. You just got to keep your composure because, celebrities are just people like us,
Absolutely. And again, in that case, he was your classmate. So, but such a funny story. Because I remember, because obviously we're friends on social media, and you posted the picture, and like, I at first I thought, I'm like, oh, it looks a lot like, and I'm like, no, it didn't. And then like the next day, all of a sudden, it's like everywhere. I'm like, wait a second, no shit.
Yeah, my phone blew up that morning. Like, it was just crazy. I actually had other media outlets that respectfully asked to use it, and I declined under the pretense that we weren't supposed to share it out. But I think ETV reached out to me directly in my Instagram to ask if they could use the photo, and I go, well, listen, we really weren't supposed to, so I apologize, but it was out there anyway.
Funny stuff. So let's talk a little bit about some upcoming convention appearances. And let's give a good plug to our buddy Sam Chase. Saratoga's coming up this weekend. Not this weekend. I'm sorry. In 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks.
That's the 19th, right? The 19th.
That's right. The 19th. Yep.
So up in Saratoga, New York, they got an amazing, fun group of guests. This is my first Saratoga. This is how many number Saratogas for you?
Geez, I lost count. I'd have to say like maybe 5, 6. It's been a while now. There's been so many, and I used to do them twice a year because you'd have them in the spring and the fall. So there's been so many Saratogas, and I've been doing them for several years, and I always forget that we lost a year and a half with COVID.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? But Sam's a wonderful friend. I was lucky enough to get linked up with him when I was working the Vermont shows.
Yeah.
And he saw how well I was on the mic over there doing announcements that he ported me over as the host for his shows. So, Poughkeepsie, I was there doing the announcements, and the sketch off panel. I do the same thing over in Saratoga. And, we just like to have fun up there and just keep it light and, make sure everybody has a good time.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those, and even myself and those watching who have not been to Saratoga, and if you want to take a ride, all of our friends in the Hudson Valley, it's like 2 hours up north. Go have some fun. What can people look forward to the most in Saratoga outside of your wonderful announcing abilities and the sketch off? What are some other things that people can be looking forward to?
Well, one of the big things that's happening at this upcoming Saratoga is a Clerks reunion.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have Dante, Randall, and the Cancer Merchant. So it's Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, and Scott Schiaffo. We'll all be there in attendance. They're gonna be snapping photos, signing autographs, all that good stuff. So that's gonna be real fun. You know, it's one of the only places where you're gonna see, you know, most of the Clerks staff reunited right now, especially considering they have the third movie coming out soon. And I'm sure that panel, if you're like into Clerks and if you want to know what's going to be happening with the next movie, that panel is the place you want to be at. Another great thing is that Jeff Anderson, who plays Randall in Clerks, he doesn't get out too much to a lot of these shows. So it's really special that he's going to be there. And I'm really excited just to kind of, you know, see what he's got, see what he has to say. And honestly, just to meet him, because Clerks was just so inspirational for me back in the day.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And who doesn't love Randall?
Right, Randall's the best,
the best character in those movies. But yeah, no, same here. Like I can't wait to just. I mean, and again, Brian O'Halloran, Scott are all good guys. You've met them several times. I've met them several times. Fantastic guys. But to get to meet Jeff Anderson, like, wow, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And like you said, like, a great place. They're going to panel, and like, I'm gonna be working with that panel too. And I can't wait to hear what they can and cannot say about this Clerks 3 film.
I know. Yeah, I'm really excited about it, and just I've always loved the Clerks movies. I think they're one of the few movies that actually invoke like an emotional reaction out of me when I watch it.
Yeah.
I can't watch Clerks 2's ending, where everything goes into black and white and it fades into Soul Asylum, without trying to hold back a little bit of a tear, just because that inherently spoke to my teenage years in the 90s.
Yeah.
Working in a coffee shop, listening to 90s music, connecting with their points of views and the pop culture. And, Kevin Smith, Brian, and, Jeff did such a great job of making me feel my age at the end of that movie, that I was like, that's genuine art form right there, to invoke feelings after watching a piece of art or a movie or whatever. That's key. You have something special there.
Yeah, and I you mentioned Clerks too. Like, I mean, and I love all the Kevin Smith movies. They're great, but there's just, I mean, I know one of the things for me that I love about Clerks too, but Rosario Dawson.
Oh yes, that's like,
but
that goes without saying for me. I mean, just the ABC dance number is like,
I don't know.
I can watch that over and over again.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mike's like, I blacked out.
But no, I mean, just, I think some of the conversations in that movie are just hilarious.
Oh, for sure. It's like, it's funny. Like, one of the things I love about that movie is that when Randall is poking fun at the guy about Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's like he was like, he has his own fandom, and he was poking fun at the other fandom. You know what I mean? It's
a bunch of guys walking in the woods, right?
Yeah, and and the other thing was, like, it reminded me of like growing up, and like you had like the Trekkies on one side, and the Star Wars fans on the other, and while you can kind of appreciate both, sometimes the lines were drawn, And I feel like that's also something inherent from our generation, right?
Yes.
Where now everything's a little bit more widely accepted. You can like everything and it's cool, but it's like, oh, it's like those guys are the Trekkies, or, oh, those guys only watch Star Wars, You
had to pick a side then.
You really had to. It was like Civil War, either you're
right.
Team Cap or Team Iron Man.
But meeting them and spending the weekend with those guys is going to be phenomenal. But I know, like, Nakia Burrese from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, she was the third Yellow Ranger, right?
Second, actually, I believe.
No, because
was she the third?
Third, because second was why is it, and because I know her too. Oh my God, and she was a guest. if she's watching, Karen Ashley. Sorry, Karen.
Oh, Karen Ashley. Yes, that's right.
She
It was
like
Karen Ashley.
But I did order the Karen Ashley action figure. So next time I see you, Karen, I'm gonna have you sign that for me. But yeah, Nakia Burrese will be there. Samantha Newark, the voice of Jem, is going to be there.
Look, so I'm really excited about Samantha Newark, only because I think I'm one of the few boys back in the day that would watch Jem and actually enjoy it, because it was like G.I. Joe, Transformers, and then Jem, and they were all on like one right after the other, and it was like, well, I got nothing else better to do. I might as well just watch this, and then you get roped into it, you know.
And I'm glad you mentioned it, because I mean, listen, it was Hasbro Animation, right? So
right,
that's exactly what
it was. A Deke Studios or whatever it was. Yeah,
Sunbow, right?
Oh, Sundowns. Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah,
Sunbow, but
Sunbow. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, you know, that animation style is like almost like they could be existing in the same universe.
Well, exactly. And I mean, listen, Transformers and G.I. Joe had kind of like a little bit of a crossover. I'm surprised they never did that with Jem, you know?
That was my favorite episode too, with you know, Cobra Commander at the end, and he had the raspy voice, because Cobra Commander was Chris Latta, who also voiced Starscream. Yeah,
correct.
Which is awesome.
Correct. And then the other cool guest there, and I know you, I don't know if you got to meet her, but up at Northeast Comic Con back in June, Erica Schroeder, she's also going to be up at Saratoga too. She was up at Northeast, but she'll a voice actress.
I believe I've actually met her before elsewhere, but not at Northeast, I think. I believe it was, it was Animazing Radio. A friend of mine, Doug Engler, I believe, had her on the show the same time I was on once. So I got acquainted with her that way, I believe. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then, of course,
it'll be great to see her again.
All the amazing comic artists that'll be there.
Jay Moores.
What's that?
Jay Moores.
Jay Moores and Robert Bruno.
Yep, that's right. Robert Bruno. He's a staple at that show.
GMX Cosplay, our buddy Anthony, he's gonna be doing some cosplay contests there. Chelsea will be up there. So I mean, like it's a party. So anybody who's wanting to come up to the Saratoga area in 2 weeks, right? 2 weekends away. You know, it's the place to be. I'm looking forward to. Johnny, I'm hoping Saratoga is like a party town.
Oh, so you got the college right around there. You got Skidmore right around the corner. So it usually is after hours, very much a party town. Now, I don't know what it's like post-COVID, but I'm sure there's probably places you can get up into.
Johnny C's coming to town, so it's going to be a party.
Well, there you go. There's actually one building on an off street in downtown Saratoga. I think it's Charles Street or Church Street, something like that. And it's a dance club or something. It's on the top floor, and the windows are always sweating in that place.
Oh my God. That may not be a COVID safe place.
Yeah. But it seemed like there's always a party going on out there. So if you're looking for something wild, there's always something wild downtown after hours in Saratoga.
And hey, and we play our cards right. We might be out there having adventures with Dante and Randall.
We might actually be.
So that's gonna be a lot of fun. But no, that's gonna be a lot of fun. Outside of Saratoga, what other shows are you gonna be at? Where can people find you?
So I'm actually in a hot zone of doing conventions right now. So normally I would have conventions spaced out months apart.
Yeah.
But right now I just did New York Comic Con last month. I had Monster Expo right after that. Gotcha. I got Saratoga coming up. A week after Saratoga, I'm going to be in San Diego for Special Edition Comic-Con. And then 9 days after I get back from that, I'm going out to C2E2 in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
So these are
when is C2E2?
December 9th through the 12th, I believe.
Wow. That's
10th through the 12th.
Late this year. Early, late? I have no idea.
So C2E2 normally actually is in the spring.
Yeah.
And it was March 1st of 2020.
Wow.
I was flying back from C2E2 going, oh, wow, like all this COVID stuff overseas is really hot. I wonder if it's going to happen over here. And then like I was getting ready for Ace Comic Con, which was coming about.
Yeah.
And like the next day, like shut down, state of emergency, like everything closed down, shelter in place. And, the rest is history.
Yeah, right. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So this is the first C2E2 then.
What's that?
This is the first C2E2 since the pandemic's over, right?
First C2E2 since the pandemic's over. I believe this is going to be my 4th in attendance, my 3rd exhibiting. The difference this year for me is that I'll actually have my own table in Artist Alley, where previous years I was sharing a booth. This time I'm on my own.
Will you be selling coffee?
No. So that was the thing too. In Artist Alley, they're very adamant about selling, art-based stuff first. I don't think they really would appreciate me, slinging coffee, unfortunately. But in New York Comic Con, Artist Alley, it was one of my best comic shows where I sold only comics in like such a long time. And that was real awesome. And I was glad because there's time. I can't lie to you. There's times I leave a convention and, maybe I did well financially, but like I also felt like I left being branded the coffee guy and not the guy who created, helped create Surrounded by Death.
Gotcha.
So when I do something like Artist Alley in New York and it's only comics, it's real gratifying that I was able to do well only on comics. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned also about doing well with the comics. People are hungry for this, and like you said, you're like booked solidly like week after week after week because the shutdown. It's been like 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years since people have had this Comic-Con experience. I hope, and I mean certainly throw your insight in this. I hope it's not an overkill with getting all these shows week after week after week. Because I mean.
So for me personally, I'm kind of happy it's like spaced out. So like, New York was, last month. This month, my big show is San Diego, so I'm on the West Coast. And then December, I've got my mid coast show. So I feel like I'm hitting every region that's hungry for it at their biggest shows.
Gotcha.
So I'm hoping to do well across all of them.
It's a different audience.
Different audiences, yeah. There's very few spillover, I'd say, between the three. Maybe NYCC and C2E2 because you could travel that a little bit better than having to fly across the country to San Diego. But still very unique audiences. And, there's people I've seen year after year in both conventions. So
gotcha. I haven't been to C2E2. That's something I want to get out to at some point.
I highly recommend it. It's a very much a Reed Pop show, but it's very much a thing unto itself, and the people there are great. The staff is awesome, and just the people of the Midwest are real sweet. They're very supportive of indie comics and indie creatives. So big shout out to those guys.
Thing again, as we do all these conventions, the stuff that I run, the stuff that you attend to, the stuff I go to, it's the indie creators that listen. I want to say Marvel and DC are a dime a dozen. But I mean, the unique talents that the indie artists bring to the table, that's really where it's at. Oh, Ray Felix is going to be at Special Edition Comic-Con as well.
Oh, right on, Ray. I'm in L6 of Small Press. Come find me.
Yeah. Do you know Ray Felix?
I don't think I know Ray.
Oh, I got to get you and Ray Felix together. He's Bronx Heroes.
Oh, awesome.
You guys, cool. I think we get along very well. Ray, I'll do an introduction, but yeah.
Sounds
but like,
great.
In regards to C2E2, like from what I understand, Ray's gonna be at M10. A little plug for Ray Felix.
Oh, M10. Nice. M10 go see Ray Felix and M10, everybody.
And where are you again, Johnny C? M10 for Ray Felix.
I'm L6.
L6. Oh, you guys might be like back to back almost.
Yeah, we might not be too far off.
Nice. What's this? Lion R says, I won't be there, unfortunately, bud, but next year, hopefully. So, but with C2E2, from what I understand too, it's kind of like a New York, like you said, a Reed Pop show, New York Comic Con, but like a little bit like not so New York Comic Con, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like it's a little bit more laid back in that sense. And it's unlike New York, a lot of like C2E2, a lot of people are walking around with beer cups. which I think is great. It's a very open show in that regard, and I guess it's just the people. It's the area of the country. You know, I feel like they're a little bit more laid back and just chiller than some of the New York. You know, New York. You know, New York's a bustling city, and I think it's reflected within its people as well. And sure enough, I feel like Chicago and just the Midwest is very much reflected in the people that attend C2E2.
Gotcha. Here's a question, Joe Ryan, and maybe you can help us out. Anybody watching tonight too. As a new creator, how do you get into some of the bigger shows like C2E2, New York Comic Con, San Diego? Any feedback would be most appreciated. What do you recommend?
So with me, the easiest way in terms of getting in with the least amount of scrutiny is getting an exhibitor's booth and trying to split that with a bunch of other up-and-coming creators. So, you know, if you can get 4 people together, like a booth over at C2E2 at 10 by 10 is about $900 to $1,200, somewhere in that window. If you can either A, afford it yourself, or B, find like 3 people max to split it with, do that. You can go there. You can kind of cut your teeth in learning the process, but they're happy to sell you that exhibitor space. Now, if you were to try to apply to, like, say, Artist Alley, where it's a 6-foot table and it's actually a lot cheaper, it's really hard. They scrutinize to get into Artist Alley, and it took me like forever, 5 years, 6 years of applying every year just to, you know, for Artist Alley until they finally said, you're in, kid. You know what I mean? And I think that's just a matter of some people dropped off, new people can kind of come in, you know, and they recognize that. They see when you apply every year and you keep trying and your resume expands. So go in there with a heavy resume, let them know that you're looking to kind of expand your brand, bring, you know, bless you.
Thank you. And that's interesting what you say. I never even thought about that. So really, it's easier to get an exhibitor spot than an Artist Alley spot.
Yep. You can sell, like, pardon my French, cans of piss as an exhibitor on the floor, and a lot easier than trying to get into Artist Alley. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess like you said, if you get a few people to share that exhibitor space with, I mean, and I guess there's traffic everywhere, but if you're in that exhibitor space, like there might be a little bit more floor traffic because everybody goes up there because that's where the bigger guns are, right?
So you'd think that, right? And in some cases, I would probably agree with you. But what I discovered at this year at Artist Alley is that New York Artist Alley is open an hour later than the exhibitor's floor.
Interesting.
So there'd be several days, 3 of the days where our days were okay up until that 7 o'clock hour. And then our days would be great. And I think a lot of it was that people would, like, leave the exhibitor floor. They didn't want to leave the show, and they find themselves looking around down there and shopping more. So we did some of our best business in the last hour of the show.
Gotcha.
In Artist Alley. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that the exhibitor space isn't good, you know, on a full year when Marvel's operating and there's full capacity. Sheer strength in numbers can allow you to do well as an exhibitor on the top floor for New York or C2E2 or anything like that. I feel like this year is just a little off balance because there was a lot of regulations in place and, you know, vax mandates and things like that kind of changed the landscape of people who were able to attend, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and you know, you're mentioning about Marvel. And again, I know the guy who runs the Marvel booth too. And
Mike,
and he does an amazing job. You know, he's a good buddy.
His name's Mike, I think, right?
Mike. Yep. His name's Mike.
Yeah. That guy is tough as nails. Let me tell you.
He is.
He runs a tight ship. I love that guy.
He does. I mean, I'm a phenomenal guy. Him and his team go and they knock it out of the park every single year. But that being said, when, like, they have the cast of the Avengers up there on that stage, if you are that exhibitor next to the Marvel booth, guess what? People don't care about what you got because they're watching the Avengers up on the stage.
Exactly. So I would see people. So Marvel consistently at the end of their show, at the end of the convention day, would throw out giant prizes.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, people would flock to the Marvel booth. So I would always see people shutting down their booths early, knowing that they're like pretty much done for the day once people flock to Marvel, because after that, everybody's gone, you know?
Yeah. So the pros and the cons. And Joe, you could sell art at the exhibitor booth.
Yes, absolutely. You could sell art. You could sell almost whatever you want up as an exhibitor, as long as it kind of falls into the guidelines of, at a convention, whatever you can sell at a convention.
But I mean, those are the pros and the cons of, whether it be Artist Alley versus exhibitor booth. So
that's the difference. If I had an exhibitor booth, I could sell bags of my coffee. If I went to Artist Alley, I could not.
Yeah. But if your coffee was selling good those last 2 hours because you're across from Marvel, you may not be doing so well then. But if you're an Artist Alley, you're going to be rocking. So
there
again,
you go.
Pros and the cons, So
totally.
Oh, we know Kim. You know Kim Lusso.
Oh, Kim, thank you so much.
She wishes you a happy birthday.
Her son Kelly is so gracious. He's a very big fan of Surrounded by Death, and actually cosplays as the Pete character for me all the time. I love that guy.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, listen, we've been on for a little bit over an hour now. Time flies when we're having fun. It's great.
Time flies, my man.
So, guys, if you have not already, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, follow Johnny C138 on Twitter and Instagram. Get Surrounded by Death. If you're watching over on Instagram too, go over to Incredicon HV, follow us there. We have a convention coming up December 4th. We're going to be with Johnny C up in Saratoga on the 19th of November with Sam Chase and all the great people, Anthony and Chelsea and the guys from Clerks. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Moore's, everybody.
Are you going to have coffee up in Saratoga?
So because I'm the host of that show, I won't even have my comics. I just do the hosting, but I will have the panel, the sketch panel. So yeah, that's the one thing I'll be doing up there.
Come and see us at Saratoga. And folks, everybody watching, we'll see you hopefully next week. I don't know if we're gonna do an IncrediChat next week. We're gonna do another one before Saratoga though too.
I was gonna say one more big thing. Big shout out. I do a indie comics YouTube show, not unlike this right here. Awesome. Every Wednesday night with my good friend Keith Gleason, called Indie Comics Relay. So check us out every Wednesday night. We're actually off next week, but the following Wednesday night, just go to Indie Comics Relay on YouTube, smash that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we go live. We feature indie comic creators every week.
Awesome. So Johnny C, thank you so much again, my friend, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time with me.
This was fun. You can just hold off a second as we end the show.
You got it.
But folks over on Instagram, we'll see you all real soon. Thanks for tuning in. And over on Facebook, YouTube, we'll see you guys all real soon too. Thanks again. Our buddy